Hog 01 has some white smoke in sight. Force confirmed that that's the enemy.
My targeting pod is set to infrared at the time, so everything is white hot. And I see a large flash, like a really bright flash in it, which typically means something very, very hot, like an explosion or something like that. And I immediately hover over the mic button on the throttle, expecting to hear somebody's about to start talking.
What's that? We see it safe. I see it safe. Bring it in. Good copy. We're still taking fire. Smoke is being puffed.
The JTAC comes on. He's like, "Hey, we got our front element. The troops in contact right now." A barricaded shooter that just shot an RPG at him.
Hog, be advised, we are still taking fire.
Turned out what I saw, that bright flash I saw, was the motor from the rocket-propelled grenade coming out of that.
Okay, do you see the building due south of the smoke, about 100 meters? That is our target.
And so when he says that, I just come back with something to the effect of like, "Copy, I just saw a bright flash in the vicinity of building 151. And he comes back and he was like, "Yes, that's it. That's where they are." Problem is the explosive ordnance technician that's with the ground team was injured in the blast, and at the time they were thinking it was bad. And now we have a U.S. casualty. So now my whole job in life is like protect the friendlies that are over there, protect the helicopters to get them there, and then take care of the initial threat. We're able to get the helicopter in, basically no issues. They get to a landing zone, and then as the team basically gets outside of that danger close range from the target, we're able to employ on the building.
Hog 01 is in hot.
That's clear. You're cleared high. Go high.
My name's Major Haden Fullam. I go by Gator. Right now, I'm the commander and the pilot for U.S. Air Force's A-10 demonstration team.
Major Fullam is now positioning the A-10 for a pass down the show line.
5, 4, 3 feet. Heavy personnel in the open. At show center, no mark. Present, northeast, 150 meters. Egress back to your hole. Remarks restricted. Southeast and northwest with guns.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the A-10 demo team, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all the great folks here at the Rose City Airfest for being such amazing hosts to us. It's always a great time to be flying for you in Texas.
So there's a deep, rich heritage of aviation with our family, and it's something that carries over to me and my younger brother, and something that makes us very proud to continue serving today. So some of my earliest memories as a child were listening to stories about Wayne and Roger, my two grandfathers, who were both fighter pilots in the Air Force and both served during Vietnam. Wayne was ultimately shot down and killed during the Vietnam War, and Roger was shot down a few months later and spent the remaining 5 years as a prisoner of war before he returned home. My biological grandfather, Wayne Fullam was his name. He was also an F-105 pilot during Vietnam and was a good friend of Roger's, who became my grandfather. And in November 1967, he was shot down and killed just north of Hanoi, flying an F-105. I believe it was his 34th mission. They were doing one of the Iron Hand missions as far as surface-to-air threats. That was some of the most heavily defended territory in the world at the time, so some of the most dangerous flying you could possibly do. He gets hit when they're over Kep. He tries to make it to the Gulf of Tonkin to punch out over the water because he knows that's best chance of survival is if you can get out over the water. There's naval assets out there. Basically, he's not able to make it out to the water, and he ejects, gets out of the airplane, and that's basically the last anyone's ever heard or seen from him. The other folks that are flying with him, they see he has a good parachute, they see his parachute go into the trees, and the story kind of stops there for a number of years. So then you fast forward, so once the Vietnamese was letting U.S. officials into the country to find the remains of service members, my grandfather Wayne, he was some of the earliest remains that were identified. They identified his remains in 1987, and his funeral was back home in January of 1988. So my mom was pregnant with me at his funeral that they did at the National Cemetery in Chattanooga. Probably my dad and his brothers may have a very different outlook and view on it, but to me it was, I shouldn't say celebrated. It wasn't like something that was celebrated, but it was something that we were very proud of, and something that it was something that they both believed heavily in, and that meant a lot, and that certainly carried over to us as well. Even as a young kid, I loved everything about the A-10. Kind of a goofy airplane, an ugly airplane that carries a big gun in the front of it. Like, I thought that kind of spoke to me and appealed to me. And so I was fortunate enough to get selected to fly the A-10 out of pilot training. I went to my first assignment at Moody Air Force Base, flying in the 75th Fighter Squadron, which is the A-10s of the 23rd Fighter Group that have the shark teeth on the front of them and have all the lineage back to the American Volunteer Group, flying P-40s with the shark teeth on them. So a lot of really cool squadron heritage there, and getting to fly A-10s with teeth on them doesn't get much cooler than that. Within about a month of showing up to the squadron, we deployed to southern Turkey and for Operation Inherent Resolve, and we're fighting ISIS in northern Iraq and northern Syria for 6 months. Once we got there, we didn't waste any time. I think between getting in country and my first combat sortie, I think I was only there 2 days or something like that, and I started flying pretty much right away. It was a really dynamic situation going on over there. ISIS had really taken a stronghold in northern Iraq and northern Syria, and they had claimed Raqqa as basically their world capital. Turkey at the time was a pretty volatile and dangerous place, but with the wild thing was when we first got there, folks that were permanently stationed there at Incirlik, the U.S. forces that were permanently stationed there, still had their families there. So like while we're, in tan flight suits and we're got bombs hanging on our jets every day and full loaded guns and all the things that you associate with combat, when we go to the chow hall on base to eat, well, you see like moms with their double strollers and kids and pushing them around base, which was a really wild experience because we're living on an Air Force base. Like it's got a commissary, it's got a BX, and it's got families there, and you see kids running around riding their scooters down the sidewalk, but we just happen to go to the other side of the base and then go fly combat missions every day. So it was a weird dynamic to be like, to have that odd shift and think like within a 1 hour flight of where we're sitting right now, like you have some of the most evil people on earth doing some of the most grotesque things, and it was a really weird parallel. And in the 6 months we were there, it went from that to turning into more of a deployed environment. All the families were sent home, and then you'd go to the chow hall, and now there's the big concrete T-walls barricaded around the chow hall, and you'd see it looked a little more like a forward operating location and less like a stateside military base. You train and you work so hard to get proficient in the airplane so that you can protect the folks on the ground that you're there to protect. And here you are, like here I am getting to do it as a brand spanking new lieutenant in a fighter squadron. So in a lot of ways it was really gratifying and really kind of self-fulfilling time. And I say that kind of sparingly because there's nothing really that gratifying about like going to combat and dropping bombs on people or anything like that. But when you're helping the right people, it feels good at the end of the day for sure. So ended up getting about 500 combat hours in that first deployment, and a little over, I don't remember exactly, a little over 60 combat missions in the 6 months that I was there.
154, you are full cop. Man. Here they come again!
And it was an interesting dynamic changing from that first deployment to the second one, because the first one, like I said, I'm the newest, youngest guy in the squadron, and then in my next deployment, I've got, I don't know, at the time, probably 1,600 hours in the A-10, and about to be an instructor in the airplane, and have one combat deployment under my belt and all that kind of thing. So it was a huge shift in mentality, and a different mission, kind of mission set they were doing. But it's interesting to like go back and think about that first one, the first deployment, and how green I really was and how much I was learning. Not to say I wasn't continually learning on the second one, but the second one I came in with a whole different bag of tricks and bag of experience that paid dividends. Yeah. One of the most memorable missions from that second deployment, like once we're in Afghanistan, like I said, now I'm got a little more experience in the airplane, a little more comfortable, and certainly more comfortable being in a deployed environment. But so my younger brother flies the A-10 as well. We're in the same squadron, and we actually deployed together to Afghanistan, and I've flown combat missions with my little brother as my wingman, which is pretty unique, pretty remarkable. And at the time, his wife also flies the A-10. All three of us were in the same squadron at the time, and we all three deployed to Afghanistan together in the same squadron, which was pretty remarkable time. I hadn't heard anybody tell me of other times they knew of that happening. And so we ended up flying together a handful of times, and I was pretty nervous the first time we flew together because I was like, man, this is, not only am I responsible for, my wingman now, because I'm the flight lead out there. It's like, not only am I responsible for whoever's out here flying on my wing and keeping them safe and making sure we don't get ourselves anything silly, but now it's my brother. So it's like, it's a little bit of added dynamic there. And so the first time I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. First time we flew together. We'd flown together before, home station, but of course, like first time flying in combat together. After the first time flying together, I was like, okay, no, we're good. I'm okay with this for sure. We ended up flying together, 5, 6, 7 times through the course of that first portion of the deployment. And I was his flight lead the first time he dropped a bomb in combat, the first time he shot the gun in combat. So pretty remarkable thing to get to experience with your brother for sure. And an exciting thing to be a part of too. But yeah, one of the more memorable ones was the first bomb he dropped in combat was a pretty push it up sortie. We were supporting some folks just north of Kandahar, supporting a team from the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and they're going to be clearing through this village. And so we were there for just after they had been infilled by the helicopters. They were already on the ground by the time we show up. The way these Afghan villages are built up, it's just a complex mess down there. And all the buildings look exactly the same, and so it can be kind of difficult to keep track of where everyone's at. And then early on in the sortie, they no joke, start taking fire from this big tree line. A controller on the ground speaks to us, gives us all the information we need to prosecute an attack on a target. The way that kind of our tactics were set up and the way I had briefed that what the game plan was going to be was my brother, he was my number 2, and he was going to be our primary bomb dropper. So my job was to dope out whatever the situation was going to be, and then he's my hired gun. I'm going to translate all the information that he needs to put it in his jet so he can effectively put the weapon where it needs to go. I said something to the effect of like, all right, man, here's your time to shine. Because I'm the one using like the trucker comment, not using very good brevity in the airplane. He just comes back with a real sharp toot, which is the response I would expect from him. So I was like, okay, good. He's got his mind in the right place. We have eyes on this tree line really, really quick. We can't see any of the muzzle flashes or anything like that. This is during the daytime, so we can't see anything, but I described the tree line that they talked me onto. I said, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And they confirm really quick, yeah, you're on the right spot. What we want to put is we want to put 2 bombs on each side of each side of that tree line. And so he rolls in, puts 2 bombs exactly where they needed to be. And the shooting immediately stops, and we know, hey, like we did, we took care of the guys out here. We've done some good work. I can't speak for him and his airplane, but I imagine he got those kind of like pre-game jitters out a little bit, and he's like, okay, yeah, here we are, and now we're ready to work. And then we fast forward a couple hours. We've been to the tanker, I know, at least once by this time. We're back overhead. I just happen to be looking at what I think is, very front-friendly element. And I'm doing this in my targeting pod, which I have set to infrared at the time, so everything white in it is hot. And I see a large flash, like a really bright flash in it, which typically means something very, very hot, like an explosion or something like that. And I immediately hover over the mic button on the throttle, expecting to hear somebody's about to start talking. Because I don't know, is that a good flash? Is that a bad flash? Was that a breaching charge for them to get into a building? And it felt like a really long time, but I bet if I go back, if I were to hear it again, it's probably like 3 seconds. It's probably a very short amount of time. And right as I'm about to key the mic to ask them, the JTAC comes on. He's like, hey, we got our front element. Their troops in contact right now.
Good copy. We're still taking fire. Smoke is being popped.
A barricaded shooter that just shot an RPG at him. Turned out what I saw, that bright flash I saw, was the motor from the rocket-propelled grenade. And so when he says that, I just come back with, I just saw a bright flash in the vicinity of building 151, and he comes back and he was like, yes, that's it. That's where they are. And I know this is probably this thing may pick up a little bit. So immediately I tell my brother, I tell him like, hey, you need to call the tanker, go get gas now. Because what I don't want to happen is for both of us to be low on fuel and we both have to leave them. And now we're leaving these guys high and dry. So I send him immediately. My objective is like, I'm going to dope out this whole scenario for him. I'm going to send him all the information.
Okay, do you see the building due south of the smoke, about 100 meters? That is our target.
So the second he's overhead, he's ready to roll in at a moment's notice, or he can employ weapons. Basically, we execute that exact plan. He's overhead, he's ready. I head to the tanker. Problem is there EOD technician, the explosive ordnance technician that's with the ground team, was injured in the blast, and at the time they were thinking it was bad. Now we have a U.S. casualty. So now my whole job in life is like, now we need to keep the helicopter safe. Like we don't want to turn one injured person into a lot of injured people or into a downed aircraft. So now it's securing the landing zones where they plan on going, and then the route to get the friendlies to the helicopter. That's all I'm worried about now. We're able to get the helicopter in basically with no issues. They get to a landing zone, and then as the team basically gets outside of that danger close range from the target, we're able to employ on the building.
Hawk 01 is in hot.
That's clear. You're cleared high. Go high.
Eventually get the EOD tech onto the helicopter. But by that night, he was in Germany and was in surgery in a hospital in Germany. And we ultimately got the word a couple days later that he made it and he was going to recover fine. I think it was the next day. Me and my brother both were sitting there, like at the ops in our ops building, and the phone rings in the intel shop where our intelligence folks work, and it's the JTAC we were working with the day prior, and he just wanted to know, hey, is whatever call sign Hog 53 is Hog 53 around from yesterday, and they look on the schedule and they see that was us, and down he was like, hey guys, just want to let you know, like if you guys weren't there, like we may not have made it back, so just want to thank you guys, kind of thing. And that was like the pinnacle, like that was the absolute peak of my time in the A-10. Was like, that right there is what it's all about. That's all I told him. It was like, hey, you're the whole reason we exist. You're the whole reason we do what we do. You see an old saying at a lot of A-10 squadrons. It says the mission is the 18-year-old on the ground with a rifle. Everything else is support, and we view ourselves that way. But that was a full circle moment for sure. And then the fact that I got to do that with my younger brother on my wing, that was a pretty wild time. How I ended up getting hired on to be the demonstration pilot, like a lot of things in the military, a little bit of, dumb luck and timing. I knew it existed, but I didn't know a whole lot about the demonstration team and really what the mission is. Because flying in air shows and flying in the military are extremely different things. Like I said, from a young age, I always had a passion for airplanes and passion for military history and passion for service, passion for this jet, and a passion for our mission. So I was like, man, this would be a cool way to kind of share a lot of that stuff. And so I kind of threw my hat in the ring and I applied for the job and ended up getting selected to do it. And so it's a 2-year assignment. I'm going into my 2nd year right now. My job is to travel around, recruit, retain, and inspire, and take the A-10 around, show it off to crowds all over the country, and get to have a lot of fun with the airplane. So everybody on the team, we're all active duty, stationed out of Davis-Monthan, and I'm the only permanently assigned pilot to the team. And then we've got 9 maintainers that take care of our airplanes, and we get to travel all over the U.S. and get to show off the capabilities of the A-10. So today we're here in Tyler, Texas, Tyler Pounds Regional Airport, and we're flying the Rose City Air Fest. And the whole idea is we're going to go out there this evening. And I'm going to show everything that the A-10 can do. We're going to show as fast as it'll go, as slow as it'll go, as tight as it'll turn, as fast as it'll roll, and take it out there and run it through its paces, and hopefully get people really excited about seeing some jets flying. Wayne and Roger, my 2 grandfathers, they're with me, and I feel it every single time I go up the ladder of that airplane. Every time I walk up to it and I see that thing, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty impactful. And today I'm going to get to go out and I'm going to get to go up the ladder and I get to fly the A-10. And that's a remarkable thing, and I don't take it for granted. In my book, doesn't get much cooler than that. So I take a lot of pride in being able to do that, and a lot of pride in the family being able to kind of carry on a little bit of that Air Force heritage and that lineage, which is a pretty exciting thing to do.